one of the things that and so if I was to think about if I was in your shoes before, right? Or if I could think about some of the conversations that I've had, like one
By the way,
specifically.
warning, he may invoice you for this.
I know.
No, this is free.
It's free.
Um,
Not for the listeners. $9.99.
One of the times, one of the and I can't say, I won't say the people's names, but the conversations that I could specifically remember, one specifically, and this C-level was talking to this specific startup and making some moves, making some things happen, but at the end of the day, it wasn't necessarily what it was or what it wanted to be, and he had a conversation where it was like, what is your risk tolerance, I was like, well, what are you referring to? And he was like, what are you referring to? And the guy was like, well, if you got to think about it like this, when you're 21, he's like, well, when I was 21 years old, I'm willing to do any and everything, however I need to do it, however I need to get it done. And you know what? I was okay with that because if I fell flat on my face, I stayed at my mom's house. You know what I mean? But when you're 29 and if you don't have any kids or anything like that, then okay, you're willing to take relatively some type of risk because at the end of the day, wherever that bottom is, you're okay with it, right? But when you get older and you have kids and you have family that you got to provide, and especially for a man, the risk tolerance is not as great. So the question for my man right here, Dan, is, what is your risk tolerance? And his risk tolerance may be, well, you know what? I just want flexibility and work-life balance. And that's FYI, okay. Maybe entrepreneurship is not in his future only because the risk tolerance is really low. Because we know with entrepreneurship, high risk, low reward. We already know that. You know what I mean?
For real? Low reward?
I mean, think about it. How many people like you? To me, to be honest with you, the one thing that entrepreneurship gives you is the opportunity to do what you want to do at the level that you want to do it. You're not really, and that's one of the major reasons. Yes, you get
You're
to
not
serve
beholden to
right, but also you got to remember too that comes with some type of ownership. So when everything sucks, is your fault. When everything is well, it's not because of you.
Oh, really?
You know what I mean? So you got to understand it gives you a different perspective of just life. But crazy people change the world, and entrepreneurs are crazy.
Right.
You know what's interesting? I just go back, not to make this psychological, but go back to when I was a boy, right? So my dad, as far as risk management goes, blue collar, worked in tool and die trade, machine shops, where there were layoffs all the time. Work is slow, but you get called back to those shops. Layoff these days are like, you're gone, right?
Yeah.
But like layoffs would happen and we'd be, on a lower budget, right? And so living this, a decent living, we were fine. But my dad was a bit of an entrepreneur. This is sounds like comedy than it is real. Like he would try these businesses such as he had coin operated televisions that were, before it was chains along the Indiana toll road, he had every truck stop with coin operated televisions, 25 cents to watch 15 minutes of television.
Wow, really?
Yeah, and it worked until we
awesome.
moved into digital and we've got new TVs and all that. That's gone, right? And so it just died out over time, made him some extra money. He went into concession stands, trailers that are towed behind the back of a truck. You go to fairs and festivals and auction
Baseball
sales,
games,
selling
whatever,
hot dogs and what have you.
He would just bust it out and start doing it.
Yeah, and it turns out they would buy more at the auction sales because they thought it was fun than they were probably making. But everybody needs food, but how much growth is in that? What Dad lacked was always he wanted that one that just makes him his $1 million or $5 million, and then he shuts down, right? And the thing with every business too is like, okay, that seeded my risk tolerance to be fairly low, especially Dad's day-to-day blue collar job. And then you want to just pull back on that and just be
why did that seed your risk tolerance to be generally low?
I'm seeing that as a boy that, look, with the work that he does, I think there's always a cautionary position of, make sure you got savings, make sure you're not, taking jobs that are risky. Maybe starting a business is a risk that, could have high loss, it's a big risk there.
And then you probably had, was it times where you probably, I don't know it was for me, but it was the times where probably you only had this type of thing you can eat, or you couldn't do such and such.
Sure,
that's an emotional aspect of, I already know what's going to happen down this road, and I don't want to go back to that.
That's
if
right.
I decide to go into entrepreneurship.
Oh, meaning like, I just make sure I understand you. You're
emotional
saying
awareness.
Because he's become aware as a kid when things do get tricky or budgeted or tough, meals were harder or
Yeah, absolutely.
what
And
you
he don't want
ate.
his kids to go through that.
That's right.
I
And then
got you.
if my dad would have just quit his job and went as an entrepreneur, maybe I would have that more of that spirit of adventure in that. But I think it was always like a little bit of a safety net was always the job, right? So I've always been more of a safe player.
Got it.
But then you think about the way companies, and we see this, the popular examples are Netflix, not Netflix, sorry, Blockbuster, all the video stores. My dad wasn't a visionary to be open to change. Every industry changes. How are you getting
Right.
ahead of the change and changing your company
Boom.
and business? And if you don't, the Netflix comes in, Redbox for crying out loud,
For
but basically put them out of business. So that's where you got to be a little bit more ahead of that. And I didn't have that awareness till probably age 30.
Same here.
I'm like, oh yeah, that's really
It's
true.
still dawning on me more every
And
day.
Everybody, yeah.
So guess what you need, my friend?
Uh-oh, here we go.
I need a mentor.
Bingo! 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 Exactly.
That's right, and that's right, because that reshapes your perspective. Yeah, with me and my dad. My dad, God rest his soul. I love my dad. That's his chef jacket right there. I refuse to get rid of it. I don't know what. This is a good man. And he's a salt of the earth kind of guy. All the customers love him. So generous. Always go down to the dining room, just give everyone free food. Just like, here's some free falafel and hummus and whatever. And so I used to watch him, and every time I'd introduce some idea of new thing, Dad, we should do at the restaurant, or new technology piece, or he's like, no, don't do it. The biggest thing was marketing and advertising. My dad did not believe in marketing and advertising at
Should
all.
have talked to you.
Yeah. He did. Whenever I would bring, Dad, let's pay $2,000. We'll get this person and we'll do these ads and run. He's like, get out of my face! I'm not spending $2,000. How am I gonna know? How do we know it's gonna come back to us? We're just throwing $2,000 in the air in the wind. I'm like, Dad, I don't think so. People gotta know your name, But it just never, refused to. And so the reality of advertising, that was a change in the economy, right? That we realized, oh shit, advertising is a big thing in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And so people had to change the way they think about business, And so he just resisted all that. And so for me, I think similar to you, I grew up questioning marketing and advertising. Anytime I bring something new, he'd resist it. And so I myself have to sit down with myself and Amr, this change is good. It's really happening. The internet is a real thing. You need to start doing stuff on social media and so on and so forth. And it's been sometimes it's I'm fighting a battle just to convince myself to do some of that stuff because I saw Dad,
Well, the one thing is much more now, accountability is huge, right? So if you're spending a small business owner, putting money out into the wind, you're going to see it by you've got butts in seats and they're eating your food, right? It's just you see revenue growth month over month. That's about the only way to do it, right? In my industry, accountability is huge. There's many barriers to finding measurement, and analytics to support what you're putting out there. And it's even in this digital age, still tough to do with a lot of companies. But then you've got the dreamers that are the Googles of the world, Amazon, that, they found my dad's dream of a million, gigantic ideas, and they can be more, but pontificate more and allow their employees to, think more high level and innovate because they a bit of a nest egg to be able to do that, right?
Yeah. Right.
So there's some margin for taking those chances with a lot of companies. I'd say the ad agency business, they want to innovate, but they can't because it's about client revenue. How much do we have? And you can only, there's a ceiling for that where you have to take risk and you have to spend some of that to make it back in innovation.
Right.
They don't do that.
No.
When you're like Google, you've got a lot of people that just say, what if? And if it doesn't work, fine. You know why? Because
we make billions anyway.
It's
excess.
fun. So I think there's
their whole business model. Some of those companies like Google and Amazon, and said the R&D is the heart of our whole thing. We experiment. That's all that's the central.
The risk tolerance thing though is huge because risk tolerance we all have without knowing it. Risk tolerance we all have it individually, and certainly me being a part of larger corporations, I'm like, we gotta spend, and I don't really know what's behind the books at the corporate level, at the investor level, and all of that. Here's where you can get some money. I don't do that to figure it out, but just I'll push and push and push and say we got to spend. But there's risk tolerance there that the whole company would have. Right?
Risk tolerance changes over time too with life experiences. It's kind of a rubber band.
It should.
Right? I would think so.
It should.
So how would you answer his question?
What my risk tolerance is?
Well, you don't have to answer it.
I've answered it low.
Right. But I mean, it just makes it when you say entrepreneurship, you're like, I mean, I think I'm blessed to have emotional awareness. Like I'm big about just understanding I could put myself in someone else's shoes and just understand where they're at. And I can do that within a 5-minute conversation with somebody. And it makes sense, I mean, you're 34, but like it's just at the same time too, you have people you have to take care of. And it's just, is he willing to take the risk and put them through what he said he went through when he was young? And
right.
I think but when you find a medium that he's looking for, right?
I think there's also, I mean, that's a great point. It should be like an elastic, or rubber band or something like that, because, now I can take some risks to try something different and new.
Right.
And maybe that's a stepping stone to entrepreneurial tendencies. Maybe the next risk will be, I'm really stretching myself, right? So it does feel like a nice stepping stone right now, and I think it's possible.
So you're saying, if I understand you correctly, you're saying, all right, so fine, maybe I don't go back to the corporate public company advertising agency. Maybe I do go to the smaller independent. There's 8 of us, and that's a stepping stone. You still work for a CEO or someone, and maybe down the road you might one day yourself be like, actually, I'm gonna take a stab at this myself.
As my dad always says, Colonel Sanders was in his 70s when he started Kentucky Fried Chicken.
That is true.
So